How to say that? You see, at the time when, I knew Gene was doing it. I knew because he'd written the part for me. I was the first person cast because he wrote the rest of the parts around that character, really. Number one, yeah. But at the time, we were kind of peculiar. We were strange, even to Lucy. And she's seen, an awful lot of things. So they went ahead and, Desi, who was really the business head of it. And then it was sold. It got sold somehow or other to NBC. And what they had done was they put us out onto the Culver City lot because I think we were a little too weird to be on the main lot anyway. They didn't know who we were or what we were doing. We had weird-looking things running around and green people and all sorts of stuff like that. And so when it went out there, I never saw it before the days we went over and actually did some testing and everything on it. I think I was over there once or twice with Gene just while they were building it, but I didn't know what spaceship really was. I'd seen the pictures and everything of it, but certainly when you're doing cutaways, you don't see anything that looks like the picture of the spaceship. Better to do that, go up to a lab where the special effects and everything are. Right. So we just went ahead like anybody else, but we go into this lot where there is no one else. There was no commissary, there was nothing. It had been locked up, and I think we had either two stages, maybe three, not that much. There wasn't that much money in those days.
It was a silent movie stage, basically, wasn't it? The first season, didn't you guys have to just contend with all kinds of inadequacies?
Not really. No, those were stages once the thing got sold. It wasn't sold. That pilot was not sold. So I'm only telling you right now about the pilot because, of course, the thing changed after that.
So we're back on the pilot.
Okay, and anyway, we're doing the tests and all sorts of weird things happened there. I know that the night before we were going to shoot one of the tests, because I was the one that was doing the testing for most of the women. I was under contract. I was cheap. Susan Oliver was very expensive star. So I had to test the green makeup. And Freddie Phillips came over, and they don't have, now if you would say green, they pull a green makeup right out of the case. In those days, it was like, how do we make her green? Chlorophyll was, that's right. Chlorophyll was not the answer. But we went ahead and he painted me. Actually, I think it was paint those first few times. And he painted and then put the makeup on with it and tried to put the paint with, with some makeup so it would go on a little bit better. And they send out the tests, and they come back, and I'm rosy and pink, and it's it's looking very good, except it is not green. So Gene says, "Okay, put some more green in it." So by this time, this went on 2 or 3 times or something, and finally the third time they called up the lab and said, "What do we do to make this woman green?" And the lab says, "You mean she's supposed to be green? We thought it was a mistake, so we color corrected." So
back to the right color.
Oh God! Oh, in the meantime, now I've got a face peel. Every night that I'm doing it, and there's Leonard. And Freddie had never put on ears before on the guy. Well, your ears naturally kind of go out. So therefore, when you just put the tips on without gluing them back, as was the case that happened later, they came out. And he looked like a pointy-eared hobgoblin. It was just, it was incredible. And with the green makeup, and then I had hair, which was supposed to be, it was going to be the long black hair. And so Gene had, I think only like 1 or 2 nights before, gone out and took me over and said that, okay, now we're going to make a wig for her. And it was real hair. And so they brought over this hair, and it was beautiful. It looked gorgeous. Put it on me. And we start to roll the cameras and so on. The hairdresser comes up and says, "Majel says, be careful with your hair. Don't touch it or anything. It's it's hard to get back into shape." Okay, and we kept on going a little bit longer. And she comes over and says, "No, please don't touch your hair." Says it's hard. It's very I can't keep it down. And she put more glue and stuff like that on it. And finally, she came over and she said, "Majel, I told you we cannot continue this way if you are going to keep on messing up your hair." I said, "I'm not doing anything." Well, as it turns out, you can stand there and you can see, because I could feel all these little hairs in the back are crawling up my head, and they're going all the way up to the top. Well, what had happened, they finally figured out, was the gal who had made the wig had wrong-ended it. So when you're using hair, real hair, the bottom goes down here and the root goes up here. Well, it has a memory, even when it's off the head. And it says, this part of it, which was down here, this part which was down here, says, I got to go back up where I belong.
Oh, my gosh.
And this is the way it went on for all day long until we figured it out. Then finally they decide they're going to call lunch. And there's nowhere to eat. We have nothing. There's a restaurant across the street. So we go outside the thing. We know what's going to happen, expect it. But it's Leonard and I. And we're walking down the street, and of course the cat calls, and the cars and the horns honk. And we get over to the restaurant and walk in, and everybody does their double take and their laughter and things like that, because we look weird even for Hollywood. So we sat down and we ordered, and the waitress was beside herself all this whole time. And he with his with his ears that are out to here, me with my green makeup and my hair which is crawling up in the top of my head. You could actually see it moving now because we're aware of it. And and I'm looking over at Leonard with his ears, and every time he chews, his ears wiggle like this. So needless to say, we brown bagged it from there on in. There was just no. So, but it was so much fun to do, and then the anticipation of waiting for the decision from the studio or from the network, really, and then getting it and finding out that no, we didn't make it, but they liked the idea and they wanted to continue with it. So, but there it was that they told Gene you have to make 3 changes. It says, number 1, you'll have to get rid of the woman second in command because no one would believe a broad who's taking charge of a spaceship. And they said the second is you're going to have to get rid of the guy with the ears because he's too diabolic looking.
Looks like Satan.
Looks like Satan. It'll upset the women in the audience. Right. So Gene's thinking how to get around this. Both of those statements are ridiculous, but he's got a lot of decisions to make. Right. And he said he knew that getting rid of me was going to break my heart, but he really needed that Spock character so much that he decided he would. He decided he would marry the woman and keep the Spock character because he didn't think that Leonard would have it the other way around. And the and the third thing that they wanted was Gene had wanted to have half and half, men and women, and the network said no to that too because it would look too much like there's some hanky panky going on board the ship, and we can't have that. So Gene thought about it a while, and he said he really conceded to that. He said okay, because he knew he could only fight just so much. And he said he figured that 30 good women could handle a crew of 300 anyway. So that's how we progressed into the next pilot. And again, the rest is history.
You were number 1.
Yeah.
The pilot's over. He sold it. Here's what we're going to change. We've made these 3 changes. Yeah. You were kind of heartbroken.
Sure, I was heartbroken. I wanted to be in it so desperately, and I kind of vowed to myself somehow I got to do this. So I waited, and it was about the 5th episode in, and I was reading all the scripts as they were coming in, and I saw one that had this woman doctor, and she was French at the time. Her name was Christine, but she had a strange French name on the back of it. And it turned out to be what little girls are made of. But I thought, Jesus, I can do this part. But I knew what Gene was going to say. You don't do it. I mean, once you are thrown off of a show, you just do not go back in on a permanent type of basis. So I figured I had to convince Gene of what I was thinking of in the first place. So one evening I went home and I bleached my hair, I had black hair because I had dyed it to match the wig that I didn't get to use. But I came in the next morning and I sat in the chair before he got there. I was talking to Penny, his secretary, and he walks in and just smiled. He looked over, he smiled at me like this and said something to Penny, and into his office he walks. And I said, well, blew that one. Obviously, he doesn't even notice that my hair has gone from black to white, so there goes my whole theory. And soon he walks back out again, puts some papers and stuff on her, and nods at me back in, and goes back in. And then it happened. He goes, Majel? And I said, if I can fool you, I said, I can certainly fool NBC. And he said, yep. So that's how Christine got around. We bleached my hair. We changed my name on the original credits on the thing to on the cage to M.L. Hudick, which is my real last name. And then we kept Majel Barrett on this one.
So now you've gone from first officer to dental assistant. No,
that's right.
I mean,
we should have had more to do.
You're wearing a miniskirt. What did you think you went from being this commanding, futuristic, take heed to this very mousy, quiet person in a miniskirt.
Yes, I was pleased to have a job, frankly.
Okay.
It didn't really go much further than that, except that, I was always at the studio. I mean, with the setup that Gene had was just, it was perfect for it. And I was there for all kinds of help and to do whatever I could. And I was learning an awful lot, too. And it was fun to watch him.
I mean,
well, thank
Go
you. But it was informational. I had never been that close to the setups of what goes on behind. And, of course, I spent most of my time in that back room doing my own things and my own work. And I could hear everything that was going on. So it was like, I was in on everything. It was great. Yeah, beautiful training.
Was it just the times? Was it that it was the 60s? How the heck did they go from very military-looking uniforms for the men and women to miniskirts?
That's an excellent question. I haven't any idea as to what the answer is outside of Gene loved women.
Okay.
And he loved to see just as much of them as he possibly could. And he also had network censors who were saying, you can't do this and you can't show that and so on. So he had Bill make all of these costumes that would just conform to standards. I think he did it mainly out of spite, just to show them, and because Bill brought these things in, and that's the one thing Gene insisted on, he had to okay the costume before it ever went out on the thing. So I have mixed feelings about how to answer the question. I have a feeling that I know what went on in the office when these girls would be paraded around, and I have a feeling that there were a whole bunch of these guys, sitting there okaying the costume, so as to speak. But the other thing was really, I think, to get back at the networks, because on the next show that Gene did, he was told that he could not show someone's belly button in this show once. And on the next show he did with Mariette Hartley, which was Genesis, he built into the script a built-in thing so she had two belly buttons and you had to show them.